Welcome, Mark, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Suicide Silence, this new album, Remember You Must Die, and more things related to the metal world in general. So we'll start by asking, was this new album composed and written during the pandemic, or perhaps was it before the written during the sessions of Become the Hunter in 2020?
Well, yeah, Become the Hunter was written and then released like a month before lockdown. So the truth is we released an album and then kind of got punched in the gut and didn't get to tour. We'd just written an album. We just recorded an album. We'd just done a whole album process. And we didn't really start writing Remember You Must Die until around, I want to say September-ish of 2021 was when we first had our first writing sessions again. So a full, year and a half later, we started writing again. But in that year and a half before we got together and started writing, we were on lockdown. We were all at home. We didn't do much band-wise. We did one, the virtual tour, if anybody was a part of that. No, I mean, we wrote while we were at home by ourselves, probably. I know I was sitting at home jamming and coming up with riffs and stuff and doing different things. But really the brunt of the writing for Remember You Must Die was mid-January 2022. And then we wrapped the recording of it in April of 2022. So it was like the first quarter of 2022, we did this whole record.
Okay. So talking about living influence and feeling what happens internally and externally for the musician when you compose albums, songs, etc., especially for this new album. So many musicians say that they don't have a direction when writing music and are carried away by the feelings that they have in the moment. That's normally for all musicians. So for you, how do the parts of producing an album connect with the idea or sensation of it? Could we say that the music is a concept thinking, or the music is a concept not thinking?
It's a good question. I would say that in the past, I would subscribe to the first description of how you were saying most musicians write music, which is just letting the music speak for itself and come out and whatever's in the moment. I would say that I've done that for most of my writing, but I think that in all reality, this album, we definitely put more intention into the songs and had more direction and more like goals in mind on what we wanted it to sound like and where we wanted it to go. So as much as there is moments of whatever happens in the moment, there's at least a foundation of direction and like where we wanted it to land. And simply put, I mean, we knew we wanted to be more intentional. And the reason why this song is going to be written is because we're trying to do this. And the reason why this song is going to be written is because we want to do this. Perfect example would be You Must Die being a quintessential Suicide Silence deathcore type song, and a song like Capable of Violence being a more old school death metal type song. Altar of Self being a more melodic, having a little bit more chords in it, having more structure to the song. And then, like a song like Full Void at the end of the record being long and having kind of its movements and not a lot of structure. Everything kind of came with intention, and it wasn't so shooting from the hip, so to say, this time around, which I think makes it a little bit more of a cohesive album for us. It's not something we always do. Last time we did something like this was, self-titled. We're like, let's write something that breaks all the rules, so...
Okay. Yeah. Well, talking about the history of the band, Suicide Silence currently has 7 albums under their lap. So, what do you think have been the highest point in your career of each record? And can we say that the band within their 20 years of career left an immortal trace for future generations?
I don't think that's for me to decide, really. That last question. That's definitely up to the history books. I would say that the highs kind of speak for themselves. I mean, if you really look at it, you know, the Mitch years, when we started getting covers of magazines and whatever billboard positions and selling a lot of records, kind of rubbing elbows, so to say, in the mainstream. Just, you know, you name it, we've pretty much toured with the best of the best and done all these really big things. And I think that it kind of keeps our name in that realm, which is awesome. So it's really created a long lasting legacy that's still going, and we're still young. I mean, we're not like an old band, you know, even though we've been, this will be 20 years, like I'm 35, you know, like I've been in the band for 18 years since I was 17. So it's like, we're still young, you know? But as far as like the highs, I mean, the other like massive high is, you know, when like losing a band member and then bringing in a new member that, you know, obviously like odds are against him, you know, like Mitch was a legend, bring in Eddie, and then we put out You Can't Stop Me and like basically, you know, do just as well with that. Pretty much everything, if you look at it from our perspective, I think it's all triumphant, you know, like we've had our lows, but we've always come back. We've always done something. We don't really lose our like passion, you know? So yeah, I mean, the highs, there's still more highs to be reached, you know, we're still on it, you know?
Yeah, nice. So I'm talking about, as I said, the metal in general. One of the details that American media, especially for North America, always likes to talk about is who create a musical style, or in what country create this musical style. This kind of media love these kind of aspects. So for this reason, I'm being one of the first bands into the deathcore world, as Suicide it is. So what do you think of this sectorization that the American media has to do to say who is before, who advanced before, who created styles? And relating to this, what are your memories that you have from the first days or the first years in the deathcore scene? Because I remember there you, Carnifex, Ingested from UK, so a few bands at the beginnings of 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's funny because I can remember, and it's difficult for everybody to totally understand this, but like, because I joined the band and I was younger than everybody, like I'm 2 years younger than mostly everybody, I joined the band and I kind of had like a more outside perspective of what they were doing and what was going on. And I've always kind of kept that, you know, even though people look at me and it's like, Mark, he's like the face of Suicide Silence or whatever. It's not necessarily the case. It's just kind of, I do a lot of interviews. So when I joined the band, I totally remember having the discussion with them, like within the first 6 months or something, and saying like, I don't know what kind of music this really is, but like it's death metal and it's hardcore. And, you know, it's kind of like, and I remember saying deathcore way before there was ever any sort of mention of deathcore in the media, or the genre just didn't exist yet. This was like 2005, you know, like I don't think deathcore really came around until 2007 or 2008, maybe 2006. It kind of was mentioned, but didn't really catch stride. To me, I think deathcore, the sound, existed long before Suicide Silence was putting out albums on labels or anything. I think Despise the Icon was doing deathcore in 2002, and I think that the Red Chord was doing things that were in the realm of deathcore and same era. And I think that when it comes to like the scene though, and like it having a pull to other people and not just like the sound of the music, because in all reality, a genre, you kind of have to have a culture. You have to have like things that, you know, thrash metal's got leather vests and denim, and new metal's got braids and dreadlocks and hip hop influence, and everything has like a kind of a bridge, you know, that makes the culture. The deathcore culture really didn't start though until like Suicide Silence, Job for Cowboy, you know, Whitechapel Carnifex, all those bands. So it's a lofty conversation and thing to discuss. But I think deathcore has been around a lot longer than the scene. You know, the sound of deathcore has been around. Dying Fetus, Suffocation has deathcore sounding shit. You know?
Oh yeah, well, like the first examples. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you know.
but another detail that only the American media see is that thanks to the idea of the big four of thrash metal, Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax, now they relate everything to the four greats of the one style. So where you were nominated, so what do you think of this idea of trend that created by the American media? Also, and what do you consider by yourself as a part of what, or one Suicidal is one of these big four bands of the deathcore scene around the world? Can we talk about other trend setting deathcore bands like Ingested from UK because the well, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've thought about, of course, everybody in like the deathcore world has thought about this at some point in time, because I mean, we're all fucking metalheads, and the Big Four was a badass thing. And but the Big Four in the history of metal, like the reason why the Big Four exists is because of like a specific. There was four of those bands at that time, and they were called the Big Four. Like people called them that. There's a reason Testament wasn't included in that, because they weren't a part of that. You know, like people argue this, you know, what about Death Angel? You know, what about this? So like, you know, for deathcore, it's a different era. And I think that there is more than just four. I think that there's more than just the Big Four of deathcore. It has a good ring to it, but I think that there's more, you know, Suicide Silence, Joffrey Cowboy, Whitechapel, Carnifex, Despised Icon. You have to put the Despised Icon in there. You know, All Shall Perish. Just Animosity, even though they weren't really, they kind of went away before they could really be super into the deathcore thing. Winds of Plague. You know, there's so many. There's like, I think of all these bands that we were playing with back then that were making an impact. There's more than just four. And in all reality, you could make a deathcore festival with fucking 10 or 12 bands on it, and it would be the biggest thing, you know, that's happened in a while. Because that's you know, the deathcore scene is, it's something that has ebbed and flowed so much. People have came and left the scene, you know. But if you were to put everybody together, bring me the fucking Horizon, you know what I mean? Like, think about that. You know, like they were a deathcore band. They are the biggest. They've, you know, I could go on for days about this shit, but you know, it's the scene is really big. It's just evolved, and deathcore and the scene are like one and the same, and it's just been an evolving kind of thing. And deathcore, you know, as a standalone scene, is still evolving and still growing, and we're in like a second wave of it right now. It's the biggest it's been in a long time.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's there's a lot. I remember when I hear for the first time deathcore, I hear you Impending Doom. True Old Never Dies. I don't remember them, but there's a lot of bands. I remember in 2005, 2007. It's a lot of bands at that time. So
for sure,
I remember talking to Scott Lewis from Carnifex about the impact of the deathcore on the world, and he told me that this style is still underground compared to the other extreme styles on metal, like black metal, like death metal from the 80s or 90s. So, do you think the deathcore is still an underground style? And what do you think is missing from this style to be among of the greats of the stream music? Because it's one of the almost as the next couple of years this style will accomplish 20 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still think it's underground. I think that if anything, deathcore, I agree with what Scott's saying, that, you know, it's a smaller, especially compared to old school death metal. Old school death metal has had its kind of time, you know, Cannibal Corpse and Ace Ventura, and Cannibal Corpse just being kind of one of those things that it's like, sometimes people know what Cannibal Corpse is and they don't even know what the music is. You know, it's like Cannibal Corpse is bigger than even their music. So that's kind of like a clue to it being a little bit more mainstream than other things, or just trickled into the mainstream. I mean, this is maybe a hot take, but I just think that maybe deathcore, the reason why it hasn't really crossed into a mainstream is because there's not really a big unification of the scene. You know, it's like everybody lives on their own island. There's a Carnifex Island, a Whitechapel Island, a Suicide Silence Island, and then there's, you know, and if you want to throw Bring Me the Horizon into it, that's a perfect example too. They were doing their thing and they chose to evolve and grow their island in a totally different direction outside the scene, you know. I think that for deathcore to really transcend that, I feel like the older bands have to look to what the newer bands are doing. Like, look at what Lorna Shore and Angel Maker and Signs of the Swarm and Distant and all these new deathcore bands that are kind of banding together and touring together and bringing the new wave of deathcore up. I think for deathcore, the biggest part of it, like, everyone needs to come together. Kind of like what I was just saying, like there could be a festival of deathcore, you know, if we all work together a little bit more. I feel like I think that we could probably bridge into that more mainstream, you know, era of deathcore, because it is the kind of bastard stepchild of like the metal genres. You know, it's not exactly fucking death metal. It's not hardcore. It's not metalcore. You know, it's totally its own thing. But you could say the same thing for straight metalcore too, like bands like Unearth or As I Lay Dying, you know, like bands like that. You know, you can kind of say a similar thing with them, where it's not quite mainstream yet, but you know, it's been around a long time. That's another great question. It's another great question, and a something that is like a podcast worthy question. You could talk about that for hours.
yeah. Well, no. Well, speaking of returning to this new album, speaking a little more about this new album and Become the Hunter in 2020. So now the band will dedicate themselves to promote both albums, because the previous one, due to the pandemic, did not have a good promotion, because you can play live at 2020, 2021. So 2020, recently the festivals are running, so now we are better to promote the albums. So what will have the set list or your next live performance be like? Will you mix only songs from no albums, or perhaps you will focus more on promoting this new Remember You Must Die?
I think that for me personally, and I think for us as a band, we all kind of agree, we never really want to be the band that goes out there and doesn't play what the people want. Like, we want to go out and play the old stuff that, you know, you got to play certain songs. They're always going to be in the set. Maybe one or two might be missing, but we're going to play them eventually soon. We aren't going to be playing, like, we aren't going to do the Iron Maiden where it's like, this tour we're literally playing all our new music, and the next tour we're going to come back and play the old music. It's like, bro, we want to play a blend of everything. And that's why kind of, you know, a half-hour set or a 45-minute set isn't probably the best set to see Suicide Silence if you want to get a lot of it. You know, like, you want to see us play an hour and 20 or whatever, hour and a half, because then we can fit everything in there. We fight about our set lists all the goddamn time. You know, it's like we got to figure out what the best things to play are. Are we gonna play deep cut, or are we gonna play what everybody wants to hear? You know. Usually we're going to play what everybody wants to hear, and it's pretty easy to find out when you just go look at streaming numbers, and it's like, well, you know, people like these songs because they're in our top 20, you know.
yeah. Oh, relating to the last questions, so on the last question, what are the future plans that the band has for this new album? European tours, American tours, or who knows, in the near future, Latin American tours, because people expect someday a full tour here in Latin America. Who knows?
Yeah, we would love to. We talk about it all the time about, you know, needing to do a full Latin America tour and even play in Peru for the first time. And we've never played in Peru before. So the appropriate answer to that is we want to play everywhere. You know, we want to go everywhere. We want to tour and play for anybody that wants to come and watch us play. And as far as once this album is out, we're just looking to get to where people want us to play. So if people want us to play like voice it. Let's hear about it. And like, we're gonna hear those calls. We're gonna go down and play. So yeah, tour, promote the record, and fucking be a live band, you know, like that's what we are. We're a live band. So if you like our records and you want to come watch us live, you're going to have a fucking great time live. That's the bottom line. We're a better live band than we are on an album, and that's the way it should be, you know?
Yeah, that's the way. That's true. So we are not going back in time with the music was spread by singles like in 40s and 50s, or like Elvis Presley, the Beatles spread just the music by singles at that time. So what do you think about now about the digital platforms and the way people consume music too fast, focusing more on singles than complete albums now? So can you select a song from this Remember You Must Die to represent all songs?
That's also a good question. I think that in some genres, the chase for singles has become it's watered down the music a little bit. I think that maybe metal, some areas of metal are that way. Like I love stoner metal, like, you know, like I really like stoner kind of stuff, and I feel like that genre of music, they're still putting out really cool full records, you know. But like maybe a little bit the more modern deathcore or death metalcore focusing on singles, I feel like everyone might be taking away from that classic, you know, listen to an album from top to bottom kind of vibe. But it's also, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you said, it was this way at one point in time. Elvis, Beatles, you know, singles ruled the world. And I think that's totally fine for if that's how someone wants to express themselves creatively. There's no right or wrong way to go about releasing music. And if it's inspired, if it's authentic, if it's passionate, then people are going to respond to it. And that's where we fall in. It's like, we want to make an album. Sure, it's released in kind of like single ways. It is released in singles, but it's still all off of an album that we wrote to be listened to from top to bottom. But I would say if you were going to choose one song off of this record to kind of summarize or give you an idea of what this album is, I'm going to say Fucked for Life, probably.
Right.
I think that song, it's like modern, you know, deathcore. It's got like it's kind of got the slams, it's got the fucking groove, it's got the fast parts, it's got the a little bit of melody and a little stoner neurosis shit kind of creeping in there, and it's just kind of modern Suicide Silence. I think we all really like that song. And yeah, I mean, fuck, that song's just a killer. I can't wait to play that one live. It's going to be sick. We've already been playing that song, like, since we wrote it. Like, when we play, it's like, dude, we could just rip it. It's like one of those songs you don't have to practice. You're just like, fuck, it's sick. Down.
Okay, talking about the one thing that you said is that you prefer to play live because that's the way the music. Well, that's the music. That's the way, the only music way to understand much better the band live. For me, especially, for me, it's for you too. So if you have the opportunity to have the better resources, or talking about the instruments, talking about the scenography, like Behemoth do, like Fire, Amon Amarth with Vikings, Manowar with Vikings, fighting during this one song is, well, singing. So what kind of instruments and scenery what will you use to perform much better Suicide Silence live?
That's a good question too. You know, I think that for us, a blend of like visuals. Before I answer this, I do think that, so you're basically asking about production, right? Like,
the production and live, yeah.
Like, I don't want to come off, this is also a hot take. I love good production. Like, I just saw Meshuggah recently on their last US tour, and they always are upping their production and making it really badass. I'm a huge Radiohead fan. I like Nine Inch Nails, and those bands are like state of the art production. Got to go watch them live when they come through, because they're going to do something amazing. not every band needs to have that style of production for their music to be understood. You know, sometimes I feel like bands might overdo production to make their live performance seem better, because really you could stay at home and listen to the album and it's like they're not exactly a live band, you know. They might be able to play good live, but it's not like an exciting thing to see live, you know. And yet that's kind of the way that I feel Suicide Silence. Like, we probably will never overdo production where we're going to have like a mascot running out on stage or like doing anything like this, because I don't think it matches the niche or like what we are on stage. I think for us, I would think that a light, like some psychedelic kind of influence, like visuals, like trippy influences, maybe a video wall or like video like scrims would be cool. But I don't think any sort of like characters running out on stage or like anything like that would really match what we're doing. We're not going to get Guar on you and like start bringing out people and killing people and shit. But really, you know, I think Meshuggah is a band that I would look to be like, you know, what they're kind of doing is what I probably had in my head for a long time. Like, dude, like all of the way that they're an evolving set piece. It's like Nine Inch Nails too. They have this subtle psychedelia that's scary, you know, that's evolving, and it's not always the same thing. It's like it turns into something different. Those things have always fascinated me, but they're expensive, dude. And you know, like bringing that kind of is always the hard part to do, you know. But that would be something we would like to probably do, is like you start looking at one stage and by the end of the set the stage is totally different, you know, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, but that's now it's expensive. So, well, one of the last questions, speaking of other things, when you are at festivals or on world tours and new bands plays before you, so to open the act as Suicide like it is. So what is the first thing that catch your attention in a new band?
Something that makes me like them or makes me just
like you. Yeah, that's like you.
Something that makes me like a new band. I think for me, really, there's so many good bands nowadays, and that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. Good is good, but there's not always like a great band. You know, it's very rare you come across something that's like, wow, this is above the average. I think that what differentiates like a band from being good and being great, and like where something stands out for me is the energy. Like if you see it and you know that it's like there's not a false energy on that stage, there's everything is real, everything is true, and they're super fucking down. That's what I kind of vibe on, is vibes. I vibe on the vibe. You know, you can have a band that's, you know, super, they're killing it, singer's fucking sick, you know, guitar player, bass player, drummer are lined up, but it's like that one guitar player, you can tell he's not really that stoked to be there or something. That one thing can really fucking change a good band from a great band. It's like it all being cohesive. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking, I usually look for the weird stuff, you know, like I've seen so many good like heavy bands and like metal bands and stuff, but it's like we get to play all these festivals with tons of bands, and I try to see what's like different and like, oh, you know, that's weird that, you know, everybody probably knows who Amigo the Devil is, but I don't know why, like that just came to my mind. Like, you know, go watch Amigo the Devil play and see, you know, what they're doing, like something different than, you know, just regular metal or like traditional like alternative rock or whatever the fuck. There's usually some real hidden badass shit going on in the avant stuff that makes it on these like festival bills. And usually that's where I go. I like weird shit. I like to let things that aren't normal into my sphere, you know, like I want to see what is fucking going on.
So okay. Okay. Well, Mark, the sad times arrives at this interview. I hope you enjoy this one like me. Congratulations on the new album. It's a great one. Perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and Metallidium followers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that Latin American fans are some of the most diehard and dedicated, and we won't waste any more time, and we'll do our best to get down there as soon as possible and play, and can't wait to make it to Peru straight up. So thank you guys.